I was 72 years old when my own daughter looked at me across the Christmas table and called me a failure. The words came out of Grace's mouth so casually, almost lazily, that for a moment I thought I had misheard her. But then she leaned back in her chair, flicked her hair off her shoulder, and said it again, louder this time, as if she wanted the whole room to applaud her cruelty. "You really are a total failure, Mom." Peter stared down at his napkin. Lena stopped cutting her ham. My husband Caleb reached for my hand under the table, but my fingers had already gone numb. I tried to swallow. It felt like pushing glass down my throat. Before I could speak, Grace picked up one of the knitted scarves I had set beside her plate, soft blue wool, the color she used to love when she was little, and held it between two fingers. Like it offended her. "You spent weeks on these," she said. "They look like something a bored child would toss together. Honestly." "Mom, who even wants this kind of thing?" Lena whispered. "Mom, stop." But Grace didn't look at her. My voice cracked when I finally found it. I made them with my hands. "For all of you." Grace laughed once, a short, sharp sound. "Exactly. That is the problem." The room froze. Even the clinking forks went silent. I could feel my own heart beating too loudly, thudding in my ears. I had made those scarves in the evenings while the house was quiet and Caleb read the newspaper. I had chosen colors I thought they would love. I had wanted this Christmas, maybe our last big one together, to feel warm, but I couldn't get any of that out. Not one word. Grace kept going, her voice rising. "You failed at motherhood, and now you fail at this. Every holiday you touch becomes sad. Every tradition you try to hold on to feels pathetic," Peter whispered. "Grace, enough." But she waved him off. I sat perfectly still, my hands pressed together in my lap. Somewhere inside me, something small and old cracked open. I do not know if it was heartbreak or exhaustion. Maybe both. Caleb pushed back his chair. The scrape cut straight through the silence. Grace's mouth snapped shut. Caleb rarely raised his voice. He was 74. Gentle by nature, patient to a fault. I had seen him angry only twice in our marriage, but when he stood at the head of the table, his shoulders straight and his eyes fixed on Grace, something in her changed. The fury dropped out of her expression, replaced by something closer to fear. His voice came out low, steady, and edged like a blade. "Sit down, Grace," he said. "They deserve to know what you did." Her breath caught. Peter looked up, startled. Lena's hands curled around her fork. My chair creaked as I shifted. But I didn't say a word. I couldn't. The room seemed to tilt. The air thick with something I could not name. And then everything inside me went quiet. Because in that moment, before Caleb revealed anything, I knew nothing in our family would ever return to what it had been. I did not know the truth he was about to drag into the light. I only knew it would change the shape of all of us. I sat frozen as the world I thought I understood began to split at the seams. And that was how my Christmas truly began, long before the night unraveled into something none of us could ever take back. 3 days before Christmas, I stood at my kitchen counter in Deering Center, tying ribbons around jars of cranberry jam. I told myself I was doing it for tradition, for love, for the feeling of giving. But the truth was quieter. I was doing it to keep my hands from shaking. Caleb walked in, rubbing his palms together for warmth. "You're pushing yourself," he said. "Sit down a minute. I'm fine," I answered, though the knot in my stomach said otherwise. He picked up one of the scarves I had knitted. The red one meant for Lena. "This one's lovely," he said. "She'll wear it every day." I smiled, even though I wasn't sure Grace would let her. Caleb leaned on the counter. "Has Grace called no?" I reached for another ribbon, pretending it mattered that the bow lay perfectly centered. "She's busy." He hesitated. "You know how she gets this time of year." "She has a lot on her plate," I replied quickly, almost defensively. Caleb didn't argue, but his eyes said enough for 2 decades. He had watched Grace's highs and lows, her bursts of affection followed by long stretches of cold silence. Not once did he stop trying to understand her. I respected him for that. I also envied him. I moved to the list taped to the fridge: ham, potatoes, rolls, 3 kinds of cookies. "I'll need to go out again," I murmured. "I forgot nutmeg." "We can go together," he offered. We bundled up and drove toward the Old Port District, where crowds shuffled between holiday stalls. People bumped shoulders, laughing as they carried paper bags filled with last-minute gifts. Their cheer felt distant, as though it belonged to a different universe entirely. Caleb pushed open the door of the spice shop. "You know," he said, "Grace sounded irritated on the phone last week. Short with me. Different." "Different how?" He shook his head. "I cannot explain it. Just sharper. Almost angry." I forced a smile. "She has been under pressure. Work, bills, holiday stress." Caleb lowered his voice. "Eleanor, be careful. I do not want you walking into another situation blind." I brushed him off gently, placing nutmeg on the counter. "It is Christmas. She will be fine." We stepped back into the cold, and that was when my phone vibrated. A message from Grace appeared on the screen. "Do not make this holiday dramatic like last year. I mean it." My hand tightened around the phone. Caleb noticed. "What did she say?" "Nothing." I lied, slipping the phone into my coat pocket. "Eleanor." I exhaled slowly. "She thinks I overreacted last year." "You did not," he said firmly. But Grace's words burrowed deep. She had said similar things before: accusations that I had ruined holidays, embarrassed her, made things uncomfortable. I never knew what moment she referred to, what invisible line I had crossed. Caleb touched my arm. "You do not have to pretend with me." "I know," I whispered. "I just want one peaceful day with her. One—" He held my gaze for a moment before nodding. "Then let us hope she wants the same." We walked back to the car, each step heavier than the one before. I told myself to ignore the message, to push down the unease curling low in my stomach, but the truth was already forming in a place I refused to look directly at. Grace was building a storm long before she stepped through my front door, and 3 days later, she would bring it down on all of us. On the morning before Christmas Eve, I sat in my armchair with a half-finished scarf draped across my knees. The yarn slipped through my fingers the way it always had, steady, familiar, the one skill no one could take from me. Caleb moved quietly around the living room, giving me space without leaving me alone. "You have made 7 of those," he said gently. "Your hands must hurt." "My hands are fine," I murmured. "It keeps me calm." He lowered himself into the chair across from me. "You are making them for people who may not appreciate them." "I know," I said, though the ache that followed surprised me. The scarf in my lap was deep forest green, meant for Grace. She used to love this color. When she was 8, she wrapped herself in a blanket this exact shade and called it her super cloak. She would run around the house pretending to save the world while I laughed and tried not to trip over her. I remembered one Christmas morning when she opened a small knitted doll I had stitched by hand. She pressed it to her chest, grinning so hard her cheeks hurt. "You made her," she asked. "For me, for you," I told her. She carried that doll everywhere until she was almost 11. I blinked away the memory and focused on the scarf, looping the yarn, tightening the edge. Somewhere along the line, Grace began rolling her eyes at the very things she once cherished. She said handmade gifts were embarrassing, old-fashioned, and cheap. I had never understood the shift. I only felt the sting of it. Caleb reached over and touched the fringe. "It is beautiful. I hope she thinks so." He hesitated. "Do you truly believe she will?" I did not answer. Instead, I set the scarf aside and reached for the jars of jam cooling on the counter. I had used berries I bought from the farmer's market on Congress Street. I stirred them with sugar and lemon the way my mother taught me, letting the scent fill the kitchen until it felt like home. She used to help you make these, Caleb said. Yes, I replied softly. She loved it. People change. Eleanor, I know. I just do not know how we got here. My phone buzzed beside the jam jar. I expected it to be another clipped message from Grace. But when I looked, I saw Lena's name. I cannot wait to see you. Grandma, please save me some jam. A breath loosened in my chest. I showed the message to Caleb, who smiled. She still loves your gifts, he said. She does. I whispered, holding the phone a little tighter. The scarf lay across my lap again. I picked up the needles and resumed stitching. Though a heaviness settled beneath each loop of yarn, there was a time when every handmade gift I offered Grace was met with joy. Now, I braced myself for the flinch in her eyes, the dismissive laugh, the way her voice edged with contempt. The yarn slipped, and I had to start the row over. My fingers trembled, but I kept going. I finished the last stitch just as the light began to fade, folding the scarf neatly and placing it with the others. I told myself, love would be enough to bridge whatever distance had grown between us, even as a quieter part of me knew love alone might no longer reach her. Grace told me she would arrive around noon on Christmas Day. Instead, she left South Portland late, and by the time they pulled onto the highway, tension had already filled the car like a second passenger. Peter later told me how it unfolded. But even without hearing it from him, I could imagine every beat of it. Grace sat in the passenger seat, arms folded, eyes fixed out the window. Lena sat in the back with her sweatshirt hood up, shoulders tight. Peter drove with that careful stillness he used whenever he sensed Grace was close to unraveling. We should have left earlier, Grace muttered. We are always late when you drive. Peter kept his voice even. We left 10 minutes behind. It is not that serious. It is serious to me. It does not have to be, he said. Your mother will understand. Grace scoffed. Mom understands everything. Right? That is the story. Lena leaned forward slightly. Mom, please do not start. Grace twisted in her seat. I am not starting anything. You kind of are, Lena whispered. Grace's jaw clenched. Do not take that tone with me. Peter exhaled slowly. Let us just get there peacefully. That depends, Grace said. If she can behave herself this year? Lena sank back into her seat, pulling her hood lower, her voice barely audible. I just hope this Christmas is better than Thanksgiving. Grace turned sharply. What is that supposed to mean? You yelled a lot, Lena murmured. Everyone saw. Grace's voice rose. I did not yell. People exaggerate. And your grandmother blew everything out of proportion, like she always does. Peter shot her a look. Grace. Stop. Grace slapped her hand against the dashboard. Do not tell me to stop. None of you understand the pressure I am under. Peter's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Then talk to us about it. We cannot help if you will not say anything. Grace looked away, voice raw. Talking only makes things worse. Lena watched her mother carefully. Did something happen at work? Grace didn't answer. She reached into her purse, grabbed a stack of unopened envelopes, and shoved them back down with shaking hands. Peter noticed. You still have not opened those. I will, she said quickly. When later? Peter reached toward her bag, but she stopped him with a glare sharp enough to cut. Do not touch my things. Lena swallowed. Mom, Grace snapped. Enough, Lena. Peter's voice softened. You are scaring her. Grace slumped back, pressing her fingers against her forehead. I am not trying to scare anyone. I need space. That is all. The car went quiet after that. The only sound the low hum of the tires on the road. Even the silence felt bruised. Grace finally whispered, She will judge me. She always does. Peter shook his head. She loves you. Grace let out a bitter laugh. Love does not fix everything. Lena leaned her cheek against the cold window, blinking hard. I just want Grandma to be happy this year. Grace stared straight ahead. Well, your grandmother needs to stop acting like she knows what is best for everyone. Peter didn't respond. He flicked the blinker on and exited toward Deering Center, where the houses grew familiar and my home waited at the end of a quiet street. Grace pulled her coat tighter around herself, eyes dark and unreadable. Whatever weight she carried had grown too heavy to hide, and she tightened her grip on it, even as it pulled her further down. I heard their car doors before I heard their footsteps. Caleb stood beside me in the hallway, his hand warm on my back. I smoothed the front of my sweater, steadied my breath, and opened the door. Grace stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. She pressed her cheek to mine for half a second. No warmth, no pressure, then pulled away before I could return the gesture. Hi, Mom, she said, still decorating like it is 1975. I see. Her eyes swept over the garlands on the railing and the old ceramic village I set out every year. She smiled without kindness. I kept my voice gentle. Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Peter came next. He hugged me tightly, murmuring, Good to see you, Eleanor. Then, more quietly, near my ear, She is a little tense today. I am sorry. I nodded. Even though the apology was not his to give, Lena walked in with her arms full of wrapped boxes. Hi, Grandma, she said, and that alone softened something inside me. I hugged her, and she held on longer than I expected. Grace noticed. Lena, do not drop those. She is fine, I said. Grace's purse hit the floor with a thud. Where do you want us to put things? Your house is crowded. It has always been a little cozy, I answered. Grace shrugged. It was cute when I was a kid. I forced a smile. Thank you. That was not a compliment. She muttered. Caleb stepped forward. Merry Christmas, Grace. She gave him a short nod. Hi, Caleb. He held her gaze a moment, studying her the way one studies shifting weather. She broke eye contact first. Inside the living room, I reached for the coat rack. Can I take your coat? Grace hesitated. No, I will keep it on. It is cold in here. It is warm, Lena said softly. It feels nice. Grace shot her a look. I did not ask for commentary. I pretended not to hear. Dinner will be ready in an hour. I hope you are hungry. She lifted an eyebrow. We ate breakfast late. Maybe do smaller portions this year. Peter's shoulders dropped. Grace, what? She snapped. I am being honest. Caleb stepped between us slightly. Honesty can be used kindly. Grace folded her arms. And sometimes honesty is the only thing that stops people from pretending everything is perfect. Silence landed hard. Lena touched my wrist gently. Can I help with anything? I nodded. Grateful. You can help me finish the table. She followed me toward the dining room. Grace stayed behind with Peter and Caleb. I heard Peter whisper, Please calm down. Grace's answer was low, sharp. Do not tell me how to act in my mother's house. Caleb watched her with steady eyes. He did not raise his voice, but something in his presence made Grace shift uncomfortably. When I returned with Lena, Grace stood at the window, her arms wrapped tightly around herself even though the room was warm. You okay, sweetheart? I asked. She turned, her smile brittle. Of course. Why would anything be wrong? The look she gave me was too bright, too rehearsed, like she was already bracing for a fight no one had started, and she had not even taken off her coat. By early evening, the table was finally set. Finally, I placed the last folded napkin beside Grace's plate, smoothing it with my palm. I wanted everything to look welcoming, even if the air around us already felt thin. Grace walked in, heels clicking sharply across the floor. Mom, she said, drawing out the word as if I had already done something wrong. Why is the table so crowded? There is barely any space to move. It is the same layout we have used for years, I replied. Well, it feels different. She pulled out her chair, letting it scrape louder than necessary. It looks messy. Peter stepped behind her. It looks nice. Eleanor. Grace shot him a look that made him go silent. I set down the basket of rolls. Dinner will just be a moment. Caleb is carving the ham. Grace picked up a fork, inspecting it like it was tarnished. You still use this set. The handles look ancient. They were my mother's. That explains it. She muttered. Some things need to be retired. Mom, I felt Caleb watching me from the doorway, making sure the comment landed nowhere fatal. I offered him a small smile and brought out the bowl of mashed potatoes. Grace sighed loudly. I swear, you never learn. You make enough food for 20 people. There are only 5 of us. Lena shifted in her seat. Grandma cooks because she likes to. She always has. Grace snapped. Lena, I do not need you to interpret your grandmother for me. Lena sank back, cheeks red. Peter touched her hand, but she pulled it away. I cleared my throat and reached for the scarves I had finished knitting. I wanted to give these before we eat. I said softly, just something small. Grace rolled her eyes. Mom, please do not start with the sentimental stuff. I laid the scarves out anyway, one for each of them. Grace picked hers up with 2 fingers. What is this? A pity project. She dropped it back onto the table. You spent all that time making these little things instead of actually doing something practical. My throat tightened. I made them with love. You used to enjoy I was a child. She snapped. Clearly, I grew out of it. Maybe you should too. Lena sat up straight. Mom, that is not fair. Grandma works hard on those. Grace turned her head sharply. Do not take that tone with me. I am not. You are. Grace cut her off, and I will not be ganged up on at this table. Caleb stepped forward slightly, but I shook my head. I did not want him to intervene yet. Not over scarves. Not when so much else was simmering underneath. I lifted the scarf again, trying to save the moment. If you do not want it, I understand. I can take it back. Grace laughed short, cruel. Oh, do not get dramatic. I did not say I do not want it. I am just saying it looks like something a craft club would toss together after 2 glasses of wine, Peter whispered. Grace, please. She ignored him, turning back to me, honestly. Mom, how long did it take you to knit this day's weeks, and for what? This is not helpful. It is not needed. It is just sad. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them away. I would not give her that satisfaction. Lena reached across the table and took my hand. I love mine, she said quietly. Grace jerked her head. Lena, what I do. Enough, Grace snapped. You always pick her side. I swallowed hard. I do not want sides. Grace smirked. Then stop creating moments that force us to pretend they matter. Caleb's chair creaked as he stood from the kitchen doorway. Peter's jaw clenched. Lena slid her chair closer to mine, her fingers still curled around my hand. And Grace, leaning back with that cold, triumphant smile, acted as if tearing me down was just another hobby. Dinner had not even begun, and already we were standing on the edge of something breaking. Grace picked up her water glass, swirled it once, and set it down with a loud clink. You know what? Mom, she said, let us just call this what it is. I looked at her, already bracing. You failed, she said plainly. You failed as a mother. You fail at everything. The words didn't hit me all at once. They landed piece by piece, settling in my chest like stones. I stared at her, my mouth slightly open, but no sound came out. Caleb stiffened beside me. Grace, he said carefully. She didn't look at him. She was watching me, waiting for something shock, denial, collapse. I gave her nothing. You want to pretend this dinner is normal? Grace continued, her voice sharper now. It is not. Nothing with you is normal. You make everything complicated. You make everything heavy. Peter shifted in his chair. Grace, stop. I am speaking. She snapped. For once, let me speak. Lena whispered. Mom, please. But it only fed something inside Grace. Mom never listens. Grace said, she never has. She pretends to be this sweet, fragile little woman who tried her best, but she never did. You were never enough for me. You were never enough for anyone. I felt the table tilt, not literally, but inside me. The room blurred for a moment before sharpening again. In the space of a breath, I was 28 again, standing in our tiny apartment on Cumberland Avenue, rocking a crying toddler while flipping pancakes at dawn. I was working the early shift at the Old Port Bakery, frosting cakes until my fingers cramped, just so Grace could have warm clothes and school books. I was walking to the bus stop in freezing snow because the car had died again and repairs were too expensive. I had done every painful thing alone for years because her father had left long before he died. I had given Grace my whole, entire self, and she had no memory of it she was willing to honor. Caleb leaned forward. Grace, you need to stop. This is not. She cut him off. Dad knew it too. You know, he told me. He said you were impossible to live with. My breath caught so hard it hurt. Grace, I whispered. Your father never said that. He did. He told me plenty before he died. The room went silent. Peter stared at her. Grace, why would you say that? Because it is true, she said, lifting her chin as if daring me to deny it again. Lena suddenly pushed her chair back so hard it scraped across the floor. Stop it, she cried, her voice cracking. Grandma never did anything wrong. Why are you being like this? Grace turned. Excuse me. You heard me? Lena said, tears spilling down her cheeks. You do not have to be mean. You do not have to hurt her. Grace stood abruptly. That is enough. Lena, go to the living room. No, Lena whispered. I am staying with Grandma. Grace's eyes flashed. Now! But Lena had already run from the room, sobbing. One hand over her face, the slam of the living room door echoed like a verdict. Caleb's jaw tightened until I saw the muscle twitch near his cheek. Peter covered his face with both hands, as if he could not bear to watch any more of his wife's unraveling. Grace glared at me. Do not look at me like that. You made me this way. I sat perfectly still, the weight of her words pressing down like cold water. She had just crossed a line that would not be uncrossed again. And the moment she invoked her father, twisting a man's memory to hurt me, was the moment something inside Caleb finally broke loose. He pushed his chair back, slowly, deliberately, and the look he gave Grace said more than any threat ever could. Caleb pushed his chair back slowly, the legs scraping against the wood with a sound that cut straight through Grace's rant. She paused mid-breath, startled by the sudden shift in the room. He stood with deliberate calm, shoulders squared, eyes steady on her. Caleb had always been soft-spoken, the type of man who preferred letting silence carry its own weight. But this silence was different. It felt like pressure before a storm breaks. Grace, he said, his voice low. That is enough, she scoffed. Sit down, Caleb. This is between me and my mother. It stopped being between you and your mother the moment you started lying about your father, he replied. Her face tightened. I am not lying. Yes, he said. You are? Peter lifted his head, torn between watching his wife and clinging to the hope that someone would finally intervene. Lena's muffled crying filtered faintly from the living room. My hands shook under the table, and I hid them in my lap so Grace would not see. Grace crossed her arms and tilted her chin. I do not have to listen to this. Caleb stepped closer. You do. She gave a short, incredulous laugh. You think you can lecture me about what exactly? You have no idea. Sit down. Grace, he said, sharper now. They deserve to know what you did. Her mouth fell open. That was the first moment she looked afraid. Pure, unfiltered fear flickered across her face, then disappeared under a mask of irritation she tried to rebuild too quickly. What I did? She snapped. What are you even talking about? You know exactly what I am talking about. No, I do not. Yes, he said. His voice quiet again but unshakable. You do. Peter straightened, confusion tightening his brow. Grace, what is he referring to? Grace shot him a glare that begged him to stop talking. Caleb ignored her and looked directly at me. Eleanor, you do not deserve this cruelty. You do not deserve the lies. And you certainly do not deserve to sit here and pretend nothing is wrong. My lips parted, but I could not form a word. My entire body felt frozen in place, as if one wrong movement might shatter the table we had eaten at since the early years of our marriage. Grace stepped back, bumping into her chair. Caleb, you are blowing things out of proportion. No, he said. I have watched you tear your mother down for too many years. I have watched you twist stories to suit whatever grudge you have decided to nurture. But tonight crosses a line. I have not done anything, she insisted. Her voice suddenly higher, thinner. You are trying to make me look crazy, Peter whispered. Grace, why are you panicking? I am not panicking. Caleb pointed toward the living room, toward the sound of Lena crying. That is panicking. That is fear. And you know why? Grace swallowed hard, her eyes darting toward her purse on the chair. It was the single guilty gesture she could not hide. Caleb saw it. So did Peter. So did I. He leaned forward slightly. Sit down, he repeated. Because if you will not tell the truth, I will. Grace stood rigid, her hands trembling now, breath coming too fast. And before anyone could speak another word, we all knew something had cracked wide open, something she had fought desperately to hide. Caleb took a slow breath, then the world held its breath with him, and everything went silent. Grace stood frozen beside her chair, her face tight and pale. Caleb's voice stayed calm, but his eyes didn't leave her. You forged your mother's signature. Peter blinked. Unsure he heard correctly. What Grace shook her head fast, almost violently. No, absolutely not. That is ridiculous. Caleb didn't flinch. 3 months ago, a personal loan from North Coast Credit. $20,000, taken out under Eleanor's name. Peter stood slowly, as though every muscle in his body rebelled. Grace, he said, tell me he is wrong. She stared at him, mouth opening and closing without sound. I felt lightheaded. Caleb, I whispered, I do not want loan. He touched my shoulder. The mail came when you were visiting Marla. I saw the letter addressed to you. I thought it was a mistake at first. It was a mistake. Grace snapped, desperate. Someone used her information. Identity theft happens every day. Caleb raised a folded paper he had been keeping in his back pocket. The bank sent a confirmation notice with a scanned copy of the application. It has your handwriting, Grace. Even your middle initial curl. I recognized it before I wanted to. Peter's breath hitched. You forged your mother's name. Grace's voice cracked. I did not. Someone must have. Lena stumbled back into the dining room, her cheeks wet, hands shaking. Grandma, she whispered, looking at me instead of her mother. Grace spun toward her. Why are you in here? Go back. Lena stepped behind the chair next to me, clutching it like a shield. Caleb continued. The loan repayments withdrew from Eleanor's account twice before I noticed. Small amounts, almost hidden among her monthly bills. I stared at Grace. You took money from me without asking. Grace's jaw clenched. You would not understand, then explain it. Peter said, his voice trembling. I needed help, she shouted. More at the wall than at us. I had things to take care of. You do not know everything. So you stole. Peter said. From your own mother. It is not stealing. Grace snapped. I was going to pay it back. When he shot back, she had no answer. Caleb placed the folded paper on the table. You put her in financial jeopardy. You forged her legal consent. The bank could have pressed charges already. Grace grabbed the paper, crumpling it in her fist. You had no right to dig through her mail. You had no right, Caleb replied. To turn her into your personal safety net. Again, that word hit me harder than the loan. Again, Grace's eyes darted toward him, wide and furious. You do not get to say that. He looked at me instead. Eleanor, this is not the first time she has done something like this. Something inside me cracked the kind of crack that doesn't make noise, only changes the air in the room. Grace stepped back. Stop talking. Both of you, stop twisting everything I do, Peter whispered. Grace, what else did you do? Her silence said everything she wouldn't. Lena pressed herself closer to me. Grandma, I am sorry, she cried softly. I am so sorry. I held her hand, my voice barely audible. It is not your fault. Sweetheart, Grace stared at the floor, breathing hard, her mask slipping piece by piece. Do not look at me like I am a monster, she said finally. I did what I had to. Peter swallowed. You hurt your mother. You do not understand, she whispered. She was right. None of us did. But the truth had broken open, and there was no going back. Grace shoved back from the table so violently her chair toppled behind her. The sound rattled the dishes, the walls, even my bones. I am done, she said, grabbing her coat from the back of the sofa. I am not staying here to be attacked. Peter stood halfway, torn. Grace, you were not attacked. You were confronted because you lied. She pointed at him, her finger trembling. So now you are taking her side. I am taking the side of reality, he said quietly. Grace threw her coat over one arm. Get the car keys. We are leaving. He didn't move. I said, get the keys. Peter shook his head. No, I am not going anywhere with you until you calm down. Her laugh was sharp and humorless. Of course. Of course you choose them. She gestured toward me and Caleb with a sweeping motion, as if we were a single unit conspiring against her. Grace, I said softly, you should not drive like this. Do not tell me what to do, she snapped. Not anymore. Lena's breath hitched behind me. Mom, please. Can we just talk? No. Lena, Grace said sharply. You do not get to lecture me too. I am not lecturing, Lena whispered. I just do not want you to leave angry. Well, too late. She turned to Peter again. Are you coming with me or not? I am staying, he said. The words weighed heavier than anything else he had said all night. Grace stared at him like he had betrayed her. Fine, she said. Stay with your little alliance. Then she marched toward the door. Caleb made a move as if to stop her, but I touched his arm. His muscles were tense, mine were shaking. Grace, I said, please. She didn't look back. I am done being the villain in your stories. The door slammed so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. Lena burst into tears instantly, the sound small and desperate. She stumbled toward me, wrapping her arms around my waist as if bracing for impact. I am sorry, she sobbed. I am so sorry she said those things. I held her tightly. Sweetheart, none of this is your fault. Peter rubbed his hands over his face. I knew she was struggling, but I did not know it was like this. Caleb placed a steady hand on his shoulder. You tried. Peter, I should have pushed her to get help months ago, he murmured. The room was thick with a grief none of us knew how to name. Lena sniffed and wiped her cheeks. Grandma, will she come back? I did not answer immediately. The truth pulsed through me, an ache mixed with relief. I hated myself for feeling. We will figure things out, I said instead. Peter moved toward the window. Her car is still in the driveway, he said quietly, but only for a moment. The headlights flashed, the engine roared, and she reversed too quickly down the street. The car shot forward, taillights shrinking into a pair of red specks, swallowed by winter darkness. She left alone. Lena made a small sound, almost a gasp. She really left us. I stroked her back. Steady even as something fragile inside me crumbled. We are here together, I murmured. We are not alone. Caleb moved behind me and placed his hands on my shoulders. The door stood closed. The house still. The storm outside finally matching the one that had lived inside our family for years. Grace had chosen fury over truth. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I had a choice too. I woke before sunrise. The house still heavy with the silence Grace had left behind. The dining table was exactly as we abandoned it half-eaten dinner. Scattered napkins, the green scarf lying where she had dropped it. My feet moved before my mind caught up. I gathered plates, rinsed glasses, wiped spills that had dried into the wood. It felt like cleaning around a wound. Caleb came in quietly. You do not have to do this now, he said. I need to move. I told him, if I sit still, I will fall apart. He stepped behind me and held my elbows gently. You did nothing wrong last night. My throat tightened. I must have done something. Caleb turned me around. Grace chose cruelty. That is not on you, I nodded. But the ache didn't ease. I picked up the last fork and let water run over my hands longer than necessary. In the doorway, Peter hovered, his face gray with exhaustion. Can we talk? He asked. Caleb motioned him in. Peter sat at the table, folding and unfolding a napkin. For a long moment, he couldn't speak. I should have told you sooner, he finally said. I was trying to protect her, or maybe protect myself. I do not know anymore. I sat across from him. Told me what? He rubbed his forehead, his voice cracking. She has been drowning in debt for months, maybe years. I only found out recently. I felt Caleb stiffen beside me. Peter continued. She hid bills. She signed up for things she could not afford. She took out loans I did not know about. She kept saying she would fix it before anyone noticed. I whispered. $20,000 was not the only one. Peter swallowed hard. No, there have been several. Smaller amounts, missed payments, calls from collectors. Caleb's jaw tensed. She should have come to us honestly. She didn't want help. Peter said she wanted an escape hatch, someone to blame when everything collapsed. He finally looked at me, and she chose you. My breath shook, but I kept my voice steady. Grace has been angry for a long time. She has, Peter agreed, and I could not stop it. I tried, but she shut me out every time. Lena's small footsteps approached. She appeared in the doorway, hair messy, face puffy from crying. Grandma, she whispered. I opened my arms. She came to me instantly, curling into my side like she had when she was little. Can I stay here, she asked. Just for a few days. I do not want to be home when she comes back. Peter closed his eyes, pained. I will talk to her. But for now, yes, stay here. I cupped her cheek. You are always safe with us. Caleb rested a hand on Lena's back. We will make room. Peter stood, pacing once before stopping abruptly. There is something else, he said. Something I found last week. I did not understand it then. But after last night, his voice wavered. I think Grace forged more than your name. Caleb straightened. What did you find? Peter reached into his coat, pulled out a crumpled set of papers, and slid them across the table. My breath caught when I saw my name written in shaky, uneven letters I had never written. Peter's voice was barely audible. This is why she panicked when Caleb stood up. This was the thing she was hiding. I stared at the forged documents, my hands trembling, the morning light catching the ink like a bruise spreading across the page. Grace had not just lied. She had crossed a line she could never uncross. I needed air. Air that did not still taste like the arguments from the night before, so I drove into the old Port District to see Marla. The streets were quiet, the lingering holiday lights reflected in shop windows, but none of it registered. I walked straight into her cafe, the bell above the door chiming sharply. Marla looked up from the counter, eyes widening. "Oh, honey. Sit. Now." I slid into the booth near the window, my hands trembling slightly from lack of sleep. Marla brought over a mug of tea before even asking what happened. "You look like someone dropped a boulder on your chest," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Start talking." I told her everything from Grace's insults to the forged loan to the papers Peter had found in his coat. Marla didn't interrupt. She watched me with the kind of patience only someone who had known you for 40 years could manage. When I finished, she leaned back, sighing long and heavy. "I love that girl," she said. "But Grace has been terrified of being ordinary since she was 12. I blinked. "Terrified?" Marla nodded. "Do you remember when she cried at my house because she got a 92 on a math test? She said she could not afford to be average. That was so long ago," I whispered. But the feeling never left. Marla folded her hands. "Grace sees life as a ladder. You climb or you fall. No in between, no rest. That is not how I raised her. I know that," she said gently. "But she built it in her head anyway." I stared into the tea. "She called me a failure." Marla's mouth tightened. "She did not mean your life. She meant she thinks if she admits your strength, she has to admit her own fear." I looked up, confused. Fear of what Marla leaned forward. Fear of being weaker than you. I froze. "She told me once," Marla continued, "that your life looked like failure. But when she said it, she was crying, not mocking, scared." She held my gaze. "Because you survived things she never had to survive. Losing her father, working 2 jobs, walking to the bakery in winter storms, keeping the lights on when you had $30 to your name." My breath caught. She said my life looked like failure. Marla nodded slowly. "Because she knows she could not have survived it." I looked away, swallowing hard. "Then why punish me for it?" "Because you make it clear that hardship does not have to break someone," Marla said. "Grace. She believes that anything less than perfect stability means she has already failed. That is why she hides her debt. That is why she panicked last night." My fingers tightened around the mug. Marla reached across the table and touched my hand. "Grace is not cruel because she hates you. She is cruel because she hates herself around you. Your resilience reminds her of everything she feels she is not." The words hit deeper than any accusation Grace had thrown at me. "Eleanor," Marla said softly, "your daughter thinks strength is shameful because she does not have it yet. She lashes out because she sees her reflection in you, and she cannot stand what it shows. I only ever wanted her to feel safe," I whispered, "and she wanted to feel superior." Marla replied, "Different goals." They collided. We sat in silence for a long moment. Then Marla added, "You have been waiting her whole adult life for her to understand you. She will not. Not until she understands herself first." I closed my eyes, feeling a different kind of grief settle in my chest. Not sharp, but final. Marla squeezed my hand once more. "So stop letting her define you, and stop shrinking so she feels taller." The truth slid into place, heavy but clean. Grace did not break me because I was weak. She broke me because I kept trying to make myself small enough for her to feel big. And I could not keep doing that, not anymore. I sat at my kitchen table with a blank sheet of paper in front of me. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Caleb had taken Lena to buy groceries. Give them space, he whispered before leaving, but space did not soothe me. It only made the ache louder. I picked up my pen. My hand hovered over the page for a long moment before the first words finally came. Grace, I love you, but I will not be your shield anymore. The pen trembled slightly, but I kept going. I wrote slowly, letting each sentence land as honestly as I could bear. I have forgiven you more times than either of us can count. I have absorbed your anger, your fear, your blame. I did it because I believed love could fix what was broken inside you, but love cannot fix what you refuse to face. I paused, staring at the lines. They looked like truths I had been swallowing for decades. The next words came easier. You hurt me on Christmas. You humiliated me, and you stole from me. I will not protect you from the consequences anymore. Not emotionally, not financially, not legally. My chest tightened, but I didn't stop. This does not mean I do not love you. It means I am choosing to love myself too. I wiped at my eyes and exhaled shakily. Then I wrote the line I had never imagined writing to my own daughter. If you want to be part of this family, you will have to behave like one. When I finished, I folded the letter and held it between my palms. I did not put it in an envelope. I did not reach for a stamp. I wasn't ready to send it. Not yet. But it existed, and that alone felt like the first solid step I had taken in a long time. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Lena peeked around the corner, her cheeks pink from the cold. Grandma, she said softly. I smiled and motioned her in. She crossed the room and sat beside me, twisting her fingers nervously. Are you okay? She asked. I am working on it, I answered truthfully. She looked at the folded letter. Is that for my mom? Yes, she swallowed. Are you going to make her leave us? I touched her hand. No, sweetheart. I am not trying to push anyone out. I am setting rules so people cannot walk over us anymore. She looked down at our joined hands. Grandma, can I stay here longer? Not just a few days. I mean, for real. My breath caught. Does your father know you want that? He said I should do what feels safe, she whispered. And this house feels safe. I pulled her into my arms. She clung to me, her body shaking just a little. When she finally let go, she wiped her eyes and tried for a smile. You do not have to decide now, I said, brushing her hair back. But you always have a home with us. Always. Her shoulders relaxed. The first real ease I had seen in her since before Christmas. When she went upstairs, I unfolded the letter one more time and read the last line again slowly. Quietly, if you want to be part of this family, you will have to behave like one. It was the truth Grace had spent years avoiding, and soon she would have to face it. I was peeling apples for a pie when the phone rang. Caleb was in the living room with Lena, helping her untangle a ball of yarn she claimed followed her home from school like a stray cat. I dried my hands and answered. This is Eleanor Holland. A man cleared his throat. Mrs. Holland. My name is Daryl Mills. I am an investigator with Coastal State Bank. Are you available to discuss an urgent matter regarding your account? My stomach tightened. Yes, I said quietly. Please go ahead. He spoke carefully, the way people do when they know the truth will hurt. We have reason to believe a second loan substantially larger than the previous one was opened under your name last month. I pressed my palm flat against the counter to steady myself. A second loan. Yes, ma'am. For $50,000. The kitchen spun slightly. Sir, I did not open any loan. That is what we suspected, he replied. Given the irregularities, the forged signature on the prior loan, and the matching handwriting. We initiated a deeper review. I swallowed. Do you know who did this? There was a pause, too long to be accidental. Whoever opened the accounts had access to your social security number, home address, and the password used for your online banking. He exhaled. Mrs. Holland. This was someone close to you. My heart sank. It was my daughter. I whispered. He didn't deny it. We will need to meet in person. Mr. Mills said, to file a full affidavit. There may be legal implications. I thanked him, ended the call, and let the phone drop onto the table. My hands were shaking. Caleb walked in almost immediately. Eleanor. I looked up, barely finding my voice. There is another loan, I said. A bigger one. $50,000. His face hardened instantly, anger, disbelief, and grief merging into something heavy and controlled. She stole from you again. Lena appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. Grandma Caleb quickly ushered her back to the living room. Stay with Peter. Sweetheart. Peter had been sitting quietly on the couch, scrolling through his phone, likely reading one of the many unanswered messages he had sent Grace that morning. Lena sat beside him. Caleb closed the kitchen door behind us. Peter looked between us. What happened? I repeated what the investigator told me. Peter's hands flew to his hair. $50,000, 50. His voice cracked. I thought the 20,000 was the end. I thought that was the worst of it. Caleb leaned on the counter, breathing tightly. She put Eleanor's entire financial stability at risk. Twice. Peter stood abruptly, pacing. I cannot believe she would do that. I knew she was hiding debt. I knew she was panicking. But this is criminal. She is scared, I said softly, though the words felt thin. She is recklessly destructive, Caleb corrected, his tone sharper than usual. Eleanor, this is not a mistake. This is a pattern. Peter stopped pacing and pressed the heels of his hands into his eyes. She told me she was applying for a consolidation loan for her own debts. She said it would solve everything. She said she had it under control. She lied to me. Caleb crossed his arms. She lied to all of us. Peter slumped into a chair. I tried to help her. I begged her to open the bills. I told her we would figure it out together. She shut the door in my face every time. His voice broke. I should have known she would do something like this if she was desperate enough. I sat across from him. What do we do now? Caleb looked at me, steady and unflinching. We tell the truth. To the bank. To whoever we need to. Peter shook his head fiercely. That means charges. Eleanor. That means legal records. That means Grace will not bounce back from this. I know. I whispered. Peter's voice turned hoarse. And if you protect her, if you do nothing, she will learn nothing. She will keep destroying everything in reach, including you. Caleb put a firm hand on mine. Eleanor, you have to choose yourself this time. My breath wavered. For 72 years, I had been a mother first, everything else second. But now, the choice in front of me was clearer than anything Grace had ever forced me to face. Protect her or protect myself. The folded letter upstairs waited on my nightstand. And suddenly its closing line echoed through my chest. If you want to be part of this family, you will have to behave like one. I stared at the phone still sitting on the table. This time, I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I walked into Coastal State Bank with Caleb at my side and Peter a few steps behind. My hands were steady. My breathing was not. When the teller directed us to the fraud department, something inside me clicked into place like a door opening and closing at the same time. Daryl Mills met us with a firm handshake. Mrs. Holland, thank you for coming. I nodded. I am ready. We sat in a small office with glass walls. Everything felt too bright, too exposed. Daryl slid a stack of forms toward me. This affidavit states that you did not authorize the $20,000 loan or the $50,000 loan. Please review and sign. I read each line slowly. My own name appeared again and again, printed neatly, then copied in the forged handwriting Grace had used. Seeing it on paper, the shape of the lie, hurt more than hearing about it. Caleb placed a hand on my back. Take your time. I signed both pages. Daryl collected them carefully, as though the papers themselves were fragile. Once these are processed, he said, Ms. Grace Holland will be contacted for questioning. She will have an opportunity to respond formally. Peter exhaled shakily. Will this ruin her? Daryl hesitated. The investigation will run its course. The intent is to resolve the fraud, not to punish unnecessarily, but consequences will follow. He walked us out with a reassuring nod. You did the right thing, Mrs. Holland. Outside, snow had begun to fall, soft flakes drifting across the windshield. Caleb squeezed my hand before starting the car. You were brave, he said. I do not feel brave. I whispered. You were? He repeated. We had barely pulled into our driveway when my phone rang. Grace's name lit up the screen, bright and dangerous. My chest tightened. Peter leaned forward. Do you want me to take it? No, I said, lifting the phone to my ear. I will handle this. Grace's voice burst through, frantic and trembling. Mom! Mom! What did you do? The bank called me. They said there is a report. They said I have to come in. Her breath hitched. Tell me you did not sign anything. I said nothing. Mom, answer me. Silence. She kept going. Voice climbing higher. I will lose everything. Do you understand everything? My job. My credit. My life, I swear to God. Mom. Withdraw the report. Withdraw it right now. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, listening to her unravel. You do not get it. She cried. I did not have a choice. I was desperate. I did what I had to. Mom. Please, I am your daughter. Still, I didn't speak. Say something, she begged. Say anything. Her panic cracked into fury. If you go through with this, do not expect me to come back. Do not expect me to talk to you again. You will lose me. My voice finally emerged, quiet and steady. Grace, I already lost you. She went silent, completely silent. I lowered the phone from my ear and ended the call. My hand shook only once before I set it in my lap. Peter closed his eyes, the weight of everything sinking into him. Caleb reached over and squeezed my fingers. No one said a word. Outside, the snow kept falling soft, steady, unbothered by the storm we had stepped into. And for the first time, I understood forgiveness was love. But so was accountability. The official investigation moved faster than any of us expected. By early January, Grace's company placed her on unpaid leave. By mid-month, she lost her position entirely. Peter told me the news first. He arrived at the house late one evening, Lena already asleep upstairs. Her backpack tucked neatly beside my guest room dresser, the place that had quietly become her dresser. Peter sat at my kitchen table, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were the color of paper. They fired her. He said, effective immediately. I closed my eyes. Not in satisfaction, just in exhaustion. Caleb poured Peter a cup of tea. Her job was built on trust. Caleb said, she violated that. Peter nodded. She also lost her year-end bonus. They revoked everything, and the bank froze her credit. She cannot secure anything right now. Not loans, not refinancing, not a new apartment. I swallowed. Where is she? In a motel off the highway? Peter said, eyes full of anguish. She is angry, confused, blaming everyone except herself. He rubbed his forehead. She told me I abandoned her, that I chose you over her. Caleb frowned. You did not choose sides. You chose truth. Peter's voice cracked. I do not think she can tell the difference anymore. The three of us sat in the dim kitchen, the sound of winter wind pressing against the windows. A family reshaped overnight. The next morning, Lena padded into the living room, hair rumpled, still in her pajamas. Dad, she asked quietly. Peter knelt beside her. Sweetheart, I am going to stay somewhere else for a while. I need space to think. Lena's eyes shimmered. Are you leaving me? No, he whispered, pulling her close. You stay here. You are safe here. This is where you belong right now. She buried her face into his shoulder. He held her until she let go. That evening, after he left, Lena folded her bedding in careful squares and carried them to the guest room. Can we call this my room now? She asked. I touched her cheek. It already is. She smiled small, tired, but real. 2 days later, everything exploded. Grace posted on social media, not a private message, not a subtle hint, a full public accusation written in bitterness. My mother is ruining my life out of jealousy. She reported me to the bank to punish me. She has always wanted to make me look weak. People from Portland commented within minutes. Some remembered Grace growing up. Others had seen her at local events. But the responses were not what she expected. One person wrote, "Your mother, Eleanor. She helped me after my divorce. She is the kindest person I know." Another, "We saw your behavior last year. Grace, maybe accountability is not jealousy." And another, "Stealing from family is still stealing." Dozens. Then hundreds of comments. Not one sided with Grace. Caleb sat on the couch reading them, glasses low on his nose. Portland may have its flaws, he murmured, but it knows good people from selfish ones. I nodded faintly, but it did not feel triumphant. It felt heavy. Justice always carried weight when love was still tangled in it. Later that night, Lena curled beside me on the sofa. Grandma. Yes. Sweetheart, how do we move forward now? I brushed her hair from her forehead. By living gently, I said. By choosing peace. Even when other people do not. She rested her head against my shoulder. Caleb sat on the other side of me, silent, steady, present. Outside, snow softened the world into something quiet and survivable. Inside, the three of us sat together what remained and what endured. Grace's choices had brought consequences, and our lives were shifting into something new, not because justice had arrived, but because it finally had room to stand. 1 year later, Christmas morning arrived without dread for the first time in decades. The house smelled of cinnamon and warm bread. Caleb hummed softly while setting out plates. Lena wrapped herself in the deep green scarf I had knitted for her long ago, the very color Grace once mocked, and smiled as she helped pour cocoa into mugs. It feels different this year, Lena said, handing me mine. Good different. It does. I said, it feels peaceful. Portland was quiet outside, the early snow softening the world into something manageable. Inside our home, laughter didn't feel forced, and the silence held no danger. Just air, just breath, just living. Lena opened the tin of jam I had prepared. Grandma, this is my favorite part of Christmas now. Caleb kissed the top of my head as he passed. It always was. We sat at the table, just the three of us, eating slowly, talking gently. No explosions, no arguments, no walking on cracked eggshells over old hurts. I realized then that peace, once it finally comes, does not arrive like a triumphant roar. It arrives like a soft knock, then settles into your life as if it always belonged there. After breakfast, Caleb excused himself to check the mailbox. I stayed with Lena by the small tree in the corner. She fluffed one of the branches. Can I give you your gift now? She held out a small envelope. I made it. I opened it carefully. Inside was a hand-painted card, 3 figures in bright colors holding hands, a tall man, a small girl, and an older woman with silver hair, all standing under a tree strung with lights. The words beneath were written in her looping handwriting. You are my home. My eyes filled. Lena, this is beautiful. It is true, she whispered. Before I could respond, Caleb stepped inside. brushing snow from his coat. "Eleanor," he said gently. "Your phone buzzed." He handed it to me. A new email notification glowed on the screen. Subject: Final determination. Fraud case. Resolution. From Coastal State Bank. Fraud Division. My chest tightened. I opened the message. "Dear Mrs. Eleanor Holland, we are writing to confirm the final resolution of your identity fraud case. After thorough review and legal proceedings, Ms. Grace Holland has been deemed responsible for the unauthorized loans totaling $70,000. She is legally required to repay the full amounts with interest." I exhaled slowly. Not triumph, not joy, just release. Lena watched me carefully. "Is it about Mom?" "Yes," I said. "It is about the truth catching up." Caleb sat beside me. "You did not seek revenge. You sought justice." I nodded, and justice arrived. Later that afternoon, while they worked on a puzzle, I walked into my bedroom and took out a small, wrapped box I had prepared weeks ago. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded into thirds. It held the final words I needed Grace to hear, not out of spite, but closure. I placed the box on the kitchen counter and addressed it to the forwarding address the investigator had provided. Grace had moved out of Maine months earlier. Unable to stay in the community that now knew the truth, she was living in a small, rented room in a town I had never heard of. I taped the package shut, not shaking, not trembling. Inside was the paper that read, "You called me a failure, but I outlived your cruelty. Merry Christmas. No explanations. No apologies. No invitations. Just the truth she had tried to break." Caleb looked over my shoulder as I finished. "Are you certain you want to send it?" "Yes," I said. "Does it make you feel better?" he asked quietly. I closed the box. "It makes me feel free." We drove to the post office together. Lena held my hand the entire time. The air was cold, but not harsh. The kind of cold that wakes, not wounds. After the box was mailed, we returned home. Lena rushed into the living room and wrapped her arms around my waist. "You are the strongest woman I know," she murmured, "and I want to be just like you." My throat tightened. "You already are stronger than you think." She smiled up at me. And in her eyes, I saw something I had been fighting for all year, hope that was finally safe enough to grow. Caleb brought in the last of the firewood. "Ready for a movie?" he asked. "Yes," I said, taking his hand and Lena's. "Let's begin." Victory didn't look like Grace begging or losing everything. Victory looked like choosing joy, choosing peace, choosing myself. The storm had passed. The house was warm, and the life that remained was finally mine. If you've ever survived someone who tried to break you, tell me how you rebuilt your life. Your story matters.